Let's talk about setting up tabs in InDesign. One of the things that I see with tabs quite often is people trying to set them up, and they try to set them up in a way that doesn't really take advantage of all the wonderful things that tabs have to offer. So I've got an InDesign file that I've gone in and I've set up tabs here, and this is the way that I'd like the tabs to look. However, this isn't normally the way the tabs come up, so people try to go in and use the tab key as a way just to shove stuff over. I'm going to call up my tabs here and I'm going to reset everything. And so we can see how this would normally turn out. And then people go in and use the tab key and press tab, 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 and try to line up everything by putting in multiple tabs in between each and every item. And then they have to go through and do this. Okay? This is not the way that you want to do tabs. This is going ahead and just putting in a lot of tabs here, but this really isn't setting tabs at all. So thankfully I can undo all of this, and we're going to show you how to set this up so we can do tabs correctly using our tab ruler. I'm going to make sure all my hidden characters are turned on, so go into the type menu and choose Show Hidden Characters, okay? So that you'll turn that on. Got to see your hidden characters. Sometimes, even though you turn on your hidden characters, you won't see them. Hit W on your keyboard. W will bring you into preview mode or out of preview mode into normal mode, and sometimes people like to work in preview mode so it looks like the finished piece, but you won't be able to see your hidden characters when you're in that mode. And you can also go down to the bottom of your tool bar and just click on that icon, which is the normal mode. And then once you turn on your hidden characters, you'll be able to see the hidden characters. Now, what I need to do is I need to select all my copy. So I'm going to grab my type tool, select the container, and then I'm going to do a Command or Control A, which is going to select all. Next, I want to call up my tab ruler, which is under the type menu. And we're going to click tabs. Now, if you can see the top of your text container, this tab ruler will snap to the top of that text container. If you do move this page around the document here, you'll notice that the tab ruler doesn't follow along. You can always go to the end of the tab ruler, click on that magnet in order to snap it to the top of your text container. But this little magnetic snap only works if you can see the top of your text container. If you can't, that snap isn't going to do anything. Now, with all of my text selected here, let's zoom in and talk about our stops here. We have our left justified, our centered, our right justified, and our align on a specific character stop. And what is a stop? Well, just think of that stop as that little parking thing that you run your car into, okay? You want your car to stop right there, and so they put a parking stop right there, and your car goes and it hits that stop. That's what the tabs are. Tabs are that stop. So do you want everything to line up on the left-hand side? Do you want to have all of your content line up on the center or line up on the right side of that stop? Here, what I'd like is I'd like 3 columns here of my items, guest speaker, employer, and occupation, and I'd like each one of them to have a left justified. Now my text is left justified, so that takes care of the first set of information here. But you can see I have only one tab character between each and every item here, and that's all that I want. I don't want to put in multiple ones, because if you put in multiple ones, it's going to then push all the type over once you really do set up your tabs the way you want to. So I'm going to click on the left justified tab, stop, because that's where I'd like all the employer stuff to line up. And then above the ruler in the white space, click, and it's going to take the first tab, where I can find the first tab character, and it's going to line up everything after that first tab character right there, left justified. Beautiful. Now I'd like to do the next set with the occupation here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab the left-hand tab again, and I'm going to click over here, and all the content will now line up on the left. Looking really good. Now this only works if you have the type selected. If you don't have the type selected or just some of the lines selected, it's only going to do those lines. So you can be very specific or very general on what lines you want to have or not have tab set on. Just select it, set your tabs, don't select it, it'll ignore those lines. Now we can go in and show you the different types of tab stops that we have. If I select all my type and I would like to change this left-hand justified tab here, zoom in so you can see it. I'm going to click on the left justified tab it's active, it's highlighted in blue, and I can change over to have all my text not flush left, but center justified. And now it'll center justify. But I don't have enough room here between the name and the employer right here because the type is too big or it's too long. So I do need to go and move that tab stop over in order to be able to get enough free space here to line this all up. If I'd like to change out the tab stop, I can delete these just by dragging this off a little tab ruler here, or just select it and swap it out for another tab stop. Here it's all right justified, and I could move these right justified tabs together. I just pulled it off accidentally. Let me go ahead and move this over. There we go. And what I can create is I can create both a left and right justified set of information. All of this information is justified on the right-hand side. All of this is justified on the left-hand side. So this is a great way to line up stuff. I used to work for travel agents, and so we had a lot of itineraries. The location, the port of call, the date, and this was always something that we used, both the left and the right justified right there. So this is actually pretty cool. I'm going to switch this back over to my left justified, and then I need to bring this back over. Now, if you get a file or are in the habit of putting in lots of tabs here, one of the things that happens is when you put in lots of tabs, actual tab characters, by clicking on your tab key, if you've got tabs set in your tab ruler here, we've got 1 tab stop and 2 tab stops. If I hit my tab key multiple times, each one of my tab characters will go to each subsequent tab stop. So if you go in and hit tab, 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 it's going to find your first tab stop, and then the next tab character is going to go to the next tab stop, and so on and so forth. So this is the reason why when you set up tabs, you want to make sure that you only have 1 tab character between each and every item, simply because you want each tab character to line up with the subsequent tab stop in the ruler. Now here's a cool trick that I really like. I'm going to pull this tab stop off and snap that off, select everything, and then pull that tab stop off, because it will only affect what I have selected. I've put in my first tab stop at 2 inches. And maybe I can't get it exactly where I need to, so I can select the tab stop, go into my location field, my position, and simply type in a value, and then hit the return key. And that's going to set that tab stop at that space. If I would like to repeat this every 2 inches, go to the right-hand end of your tabs, click on the cheese grater, and say repeat that tab. And you'll notice that that selected tab then will repeat that exact distance. This was at 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, and if we stretch this ruler out, which we certainly can, would go on to 8, 10, 12 inches into perpetuity. So this is a nice way of setting up multiple tab stops without having to do it manually. You set the first one manually, select it and repeat it, and then any other information that you put in here will automatically go to that tab stop. And all I have to do is go in and simply type in that location after I hit my tab stop, and beautiful, it goes right to that tab stop. So this is super easy to do. But now what I'd like to show you is I want to show you how we can go in and use our tabs here to do something a little bit different. The Align On feature. Now I'm going to select my copy here, and I'm going to click my magnetic little horseshoe there to snap to this active text container. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go in and I would like to not align these on the left or to the right here. I'd like to align them on a decimal. Well, in the tab ruler, we do have a tab stop that says align on a specific character. And I can click on that align on character, and I'm going to park it right here. And this is going to, by default, align on a decimal. But we could align this on anything, okay? I could align it, say, on the number 2. And if I align on the number 2, it's going to come to the first occurrence of the number 2. And if there isn't, it pushes it off to the left. But you can see here it aligns to the first occurrence of the number 2. And I'm going to go back to my decimal, and I'm going to type that in. Sometimes, and this is a known issue, you go in and you do your line on, and we'll talk about our leader here. Sometimes when you put that feature in there and you hit return, it doesn't work. Sometimes you got to go in there and click your cursor in there again and hit return again. In this case, you'll see that all of my selected items now align on that decimal. But why aren't they aligning over here? Well, right now we have the entire text box set flush left. If I wanted these to align on a decimal, I would need to go in and I would need to enter in a tab character in order for it to know that the tab is going to align on the decimal. Now, why did it push everything over? Well, the reason why it pushed everything over is because I only have one tab stop here. If I would like multiple tab stops, then I would have to go in and say align on the decimal. And then I could click another one here, and I could also align on the decimal, and I can position these wherever I'd like, okay? Because this really isn't flush left. It's not really centered either. It's not flush right. It's basically aligned on a decimal. So this is the reason why I have to put a tab in at the beginning. Not something that I normally have to do. Up here in this, it was flush left, but then I wanted all the other subsequent ones to be flush left. So I just set my text and my text container to be flush left, and then each of my subsequent tabs to be flush left and flush left. Here, if I want them to align on something, it's as simple as select and copy, clicking the Align On tab, stop, click in there, make sure it's active, and fill in the Align On feature. Works really well. Now let's go ahead and check out my table of contents. Here, with my table of contents, I would like to set this up so that I have the little leaders, the little dots that go all the way to the end. Here with my text, I have my hidden characters turned on, and I would like to go in and select all my copy, take my tab ruler, and magnetically snap it to the top of my container. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to set this to the very end of my ruler here. So I want to do a right justified because I want all of my numbers lined up on the right. So I can then go in and click on this right justified tab and slide this to the end. Now here's the tricky part, because the ruler ends right here and I can pull the ruler longer. But that little triangle is basically the edge of my container, okay? And sometimes it gets hard to take this little tab stop there and slide it to the very end of your container. So what I do, just to make this a little bit easier, especially if we want it right to the very end, you can either measure the size of your text container just by clicking on it. And right now, my text container, I'm going to say it's 5.25 inches wide right there, okay? So there's the width of my container. I'm going to go back in and select all my text again. And that tab stop that I have in there, you can see it's kind of hard to get to, okay? I can click on it and I can activate it, but sometimes it's hard to get it right to the very end. If I know the width of my text container is 5.25 inches, and I would like this tab stop to go to the very end, I'm not going to put it at the end. I'm going to put it close to the end, select the tab stop, and go in and type in my distance or my value here for where I want it, 5.25 inches. And it moves it all the way to the end. Now I want to fill up the entire space that I have with my tabs that are in here, okay? And nothing's going to happen unless I actually physically put a tab character in here. If I have no tab character, setting a tab stop is going to do no good. I actually have to have a physical tab character in there. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to select that tab stop, and then I would like to fill this space with what's called a leader. Those little dots, that's one type of leader, very common. So with my tab stop selected, highlighted in blue, I go to my leader window and I'm going to type in a period and hit return. Now, sometimes this will go ahead and fill in. Sometimes it won't. You may have to hit your leader again, okay? Now, here I get different types of leaders. And the reason why, because I wanted to show you, you can control all different attributes of these leaders separate from all the rest of your type. One of the things that's very common is people don't like all the dots closer together. Well, if you go in and select your tab stop, highlight it in blue, and you go in and type in a couple spaces, and then say your period and hit return, this is going to go and space out all of your content. You can type anything you want to in this leader window. Now you'll notice I've got a couple leaders going on because I had done this previously, and the client wanted something slightly different in terms of leaders here. So the font that they had chosen, they really didn't like the leaders very much, and they're like, yeah, these dots really aren't dots. So I'm going to go to my font menu, and I'm going to choose a totally different font, and they find something like this, and they're like, oh, I like this style leader here, but I want a smaller, I want to reduce the size of the type to get a smaller leader. Plus I want to go in and I want to change the color of that leader to make it a little bit lighter. Okay, so there is my gray leader. What I love about this is that this leader is super easy to select. Just double click and it selects, just like a word, it double selects the entire leader. I can then go in here and I can copy this and double click on all the subsequent leaders and paste them all back in. It's a little bit small, so there we go, redraw. And now I can do this throughout everything. So once I set that leader, it doesn't need to be the same size as my type. I can set this leader to be a different typeface, different color, different style, and so on, which is really cool. I like that feature. One other feature that's unique to InDesign is this. The way this was originally set up is they had the chapter number here, and then they had a text container with this copy here. Well, what I did here is I'm going to set this up a little differently. I've got an entire text container that goes pretty much the width of my entire section here. I would like this copy to be all the way over here on the red. So instead of going in and doing tab, 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 and then space, 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 which is what people do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something totally different. This is a tab, but this doesn't require a tab ruler to get to this. This is what's called a forced justified tab, and that is Shift Tab. And so we know what the tabs look like, a little double caret. But a force justified tab will be that vertical line going through the caret. And what does a force justified tab do? Well, it force justifies the type all the way to the right-hand edge of the text container. Check this out. If I shore up the text container, that tab just simply says wherever that tab is, force all the text to the edge of that container. This is awesome. So I can make the container the width that I want to. Do my force justified tab, just Shift Tab, and it's going to just simply force the text all the way down there. I don't need to call up my tab ruler and say, okay, I want this right justified here. Because if I do call up my tab ruler and I put a tab in here, then my type will always be right there no matter what size my container is. Well, I want to make this simple. I may change the size of my container wider or narrower, but I always want this left justified and this right justified being forced all the way over to the edge. Force justified tab. One other thing that we can do with leaders here is we can go in and we can actually create like a business reply card. Now, sometimes you can have lines that run through here. Other times you can just simply underline, just go in and do your underline type here under each and every line. Some people don't like this because it underlines the actual name here, but I'm going to do something different. One of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to go in and draw lines, okay? If you draw lines, then when you move your container someplace, it goes in a totally different direction, and then you have to worry about grouping all the lines together and changing it. So what I've done here is I've actually gone in and I've set up a leader to fill that space. So right now I have my name, and when I go in here, I simply turn on all my hidden characters, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit my tab key. Okay, so if I have my mail here, you'll see I go in and I hit my tab, and then I'm going to go into my tab ruler. I've already set up these 3 lines here, so I'll show you what I've done. I'm going to go into my tab ruler by going under the type menu, calling up tabs, which is Shift Command or Shift Control T. And here, what I've done, I'm going to clear all these out of here so that we can see how this works. Okay. So I'm going to snap this to the top of my text container, and that is the top of my text container. I would like my leaders to be right justified, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to park this right at that particular size, and going to end right there on the right-hand side. Now with this tab selected, I'm going to go into my leader window and I'm going to do an underscore, which is Shift Dash, and I hit return. And all it does is simply fill in that entire space till the end here. And you don't have to have any type in here. You could if you wanted to, but it could just go right to your paragraph, return, and go. Because I had all these lines selected, it did all these lines together. But in this case, you can see that the name and the address work great because we only have one line. Well, I had the city, state, and zip selected as well. And of course, I've got 3 items, city, state, and zip. So I'm going to need to set up 3 tabs here. This one goes to the very end because that's where it lines up with everything. So it gets its first tab and parks it right there, but then messes up all the other lines. So you can go in line by line and set a different number of tabs. The first 2 lines have 1 tab. This one's going to require 3 tabs. I do want these right justified, so I click on my right justified tab and I park my first tab here. So it goes all the way over to the city. Now, with that tab selected, I'm going to put a leader in the leader window. Okay. Now I have to do this with every single tab stop. Okay. This isn't the kind of thing, hit return 1 too many times. This isn't the kind of thing where I just do 1 tab and say, okay, I want a leader, and then it goes through and puts leaders on all the tabs. No, each tab can be set differently. So there is my first tab corresponding to my first tab character. I'm going to click on the right justified tab again, and my next one is going to be here. I'm going to park that there, and this tab I'm also going to apply a leader to as well. And then my last tab right there, also there's my tab stop, and I want to apply the leader to that too. And I want to make sure that that is in the same location as all these other ones so that my lines aren't longer and shorter. Okay, so easy enough to do. Select all the lines you would like to do together. I'm going to do a right justified. I'm going to drop this in here. But I know that the position of this is going to be 5.25 inches. So instead of trying to drag this back and forth on the ruler here, I'm just going to select my tab, it's highlighted in blue, put in the value, and then hit return. Select the leader window. The leader window will not come up unless you have your tab stop selected and highlighted in blue. In the leader window, I'm going to do a shift dash, which is an underscore. It's going to fill that all out. Now, coming down to my credit card here, I've got different items. I'm going to select all of these. And I've got some tabs going on in my window right now. Okay, and I'm going to click on those tabs, kind of preset those. But I'm going to apply a leader to each one of those tab stops. There's my first tab stop. There's my second tab stop. And I'm going to apply a leader to that as well. My third tab stop too. I'm going to apply a leader to that too. And then I'm going to do my fourth tab over here, stopping at the very end, which was my 5.25 inches. And I'm going to apply a leader to that too. And I did that and it's like, why didn't this happen? Well, this didn't happen because I don't have any tab over here. Plus, it's not looking like I did it very well. Well, check this out. This is a left justified tab. This is a left justified tab. Whoops, this is a right justified tab. Okay, well, I didn't mean it to line up, the tab to line up on the right-hand side. Made a mistake. Click on the tab and just simply swap it out for like the left justified tab or any other tab that you want. Don't need to delete this. You could snap this off, just drag it off and apply a new tab, but don't want to. Now I've got my last tab lining up here. It's got a leader, but nothing's showing up. And the reason why is because I never put a tab character in here. Without a tab character, setting tabs in here will never do anything for you whatsoever. But this is a really quick way to go in and fill in a business reply card like this. Set up your table of contents with different style leaders. Go in and use the cool Force Justified tab, which is your Shift tab. Or going in and just setting up a normal list of items here, or being able to align your content on a specific value or a character. Works great. There you go, folks. Tabs made simple, working in InDesign.